All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have by far the strongest guest I've ever had on the show, and probably the biggest. I've actually had the honor of training next to Connor a couple times. He is a strongman who's right on the borderline of getting into the pro series. He's still at probably the highest level of amateur that you can be. He, for his training, lost upwards of 60 pounds. And so we're going to hear about his story today. Is there anything else you'd like to introduce yourself with, Connor?
No, I think you did a great job. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to be on and put out a little bit of wisdom if I have any worth giving.
I'm sure you have plenty. So right out the gate, this is a very unique situation because most of the time when we're talking about athletes and athletic individuals, they're probably about half your size. So I'm sure when we get into this, we're going to really dig in. These numbers might seem a little different and this and that, but when I knew you and I was training around you probably a couple years ago, I knew you were right around like 450, 460, and now it
Yeah.
sounds like you're down right around like the high 300s, low 400s, so down about 60 pounds. So
Mhm.
let's just unpack this story from the very beginning. When you were starting out, kind of where were you at and what started this transformation?
The situation was pretty much after college and stuff. I was a football player. Um, College got done. I didn't have football anymore. Kind of just did what I've imagined a lot of the football guys do, or just a lot of the guys once they're done with their sport, just started eating a whole bunch and just didn't do much. So I finished college at about 370, if I had to guess, and then put on about 90 pounds in like a year. And around that point, shortly after kind of putting on all that weight and trying a few times to get it off without much help, I had found strongman, and it was awesome because it was a sport where just the biggest guy. I mean, the guys I was watching doing it was guys like Thor and Brian Shaw. I was like, oh, this is perfect. And so did it, got really good, competed. I was competing at 450. At this point, there was no effort into diet, macros, anything at all. It was just I'll just eat to eat. I didn't give a crap about anything. So like I wasn't hitting protein goals or I didn't have any of those goals. So I was competing and I was 2 years in when I believe it was 2 years. It might have been 2 or 3 years, and then I did FitCon for the first time, Utah Strongest, and it was probably my worst performance yet with any of the strongman stuff. I was consistently hitting first or second place, going back with my training partner, and with that contest, I came in fourth. And it was there was two reasons for it. One was just a technical thing. I hit a deadlift that was the same way as everyone else, but I did it on my third attempt rather than my second attempt. But the biggest one that got me was my yoke run. I was incredibly slow, and it cost me from being off the podium. And so, I had some time to think about it, and I think like a month went by. I was just thinking about it, and I was like, well, I think there's only one option here. If you need to be faster, you can't be fast at 450, 460 pounds. You're going to have to drop some weight. So my biggest motivation there was just the fact that I was trying to be competitive, but the thing keeping me back was my weight. I couldn't move as fast as a lot of the other guys. I can move the weight, but it doesn't matter if you're still doing it in like 20 seconds, where everyone else doing it in 11, 12. So that was kind of my biggest motivation for starting to figure out the macros, starting to figure out the diet, starting to lose the weight, just kind of started off from there.
That's great. So for you, this was purely wrapped up athletic performance. You just realized, hey, I gotta, I gotta be faster. The sport's developing. I gotta be more
Yeah.
athletic, and I'm just too big. So did you have a goal weight going into it, or were you just doing this by intuition, finding a sweet spot? How did you get from where you were at 460 down to, 400 pounds, 390? And why did you stop there?
So I did not have a goal going in. I think it was. probably about halfway through that I decided on a goal, which was about 400, three. In fact, actually, I for a while I was thinking about 385, but then decided that with how much weight was going to be lost, I knew that naturally a little bit of strength was going to get lost, and I didn't want to go all the way down and then have to fight tooth and nail to get back to where I was, take forever to do it. So I decided around 400, 390 area. I feel like I was like, 50, 60 pounds. It's a lot lost. I'll try to maintain it this way, have the body kind of even out. See how I feel, do a season at that weight, see if I like it, see if it helped me with my goals or not. So yeah, it wasn't until about halfway through that I actually had a goal weight. So initially it was just I knew I had to lose some weight, and so I was going to go into it. And so I started just figuring out everything I could. And then luckily, my coach Rebecca, she's awesome, and on top of taking care of my prehab, rehab, and training, she also jumped in and helped me a lot with my just figuring out how to do the weight loss journey and set up my macros and everything. So
That's
that's
great.
kind of where it
Becca's
was.
awesome. She's
She's
she's been
awesome.
great to work around. I miss being able to lift with you guys down at Utah Iron when it was a thing. So you brought up macros. Where were your macros at? Did you have macro goals? Do you kind of remember what they were like? Do you know how much of a cut calorie wise you were in? What were you shooting for?
So yeah, it was very interesting because up until that time I decided to lose the weight, I didn't even know macros was a thing. I I was I was so oblivious to the whole weight loss and the nutrition world and everything that like when my coach asked me, it's like, well, where's your macros at now? I was like, what's a macro? Like, what do you mean? I just eat food. Like I didn't I was like, I think I get enough of everything. I mean, I'm giant. And so when I first started, I think we did really basic. We just did the whole calculator based off of body size, weight. Um, I think the way we went about it is we figured out what my macros would be if I were to just do absolutely nothing, like just what my body naturally burns. And then I think we
Just your
added a
basal
bunch
metabolic
onto it.
rate.
Yeah, I added a bunch to it, and then it was a little bit of kind of figuring it out. Like, okay, I'm a little too high right now. I think I initially started off at 4,000, and just like to give a good like base idea number, and then that was way too much. And then I shot back down to like 35 or 37 or something like that, and then I was kind of maintaining. So my deficit actually ended up being my first time going to deficit was I believe 3,300 ish, with my protein being 375 grams a day, my fat being a whole whopping 100 grams a day, and my carbs were 245 grams a day.
So you
So
went really aggressive with high protein, trying to maintain as much
yeah,
muscle mass during that caloric deficit. Obviously, when you're a large guy doing that big of a transition, that's your number one goal, right? Is to hold on to as much
yeah,
muscle as possible. So let's start kind of breaking down because I'm sure you brought up that there was a filling it out phase and kind of,
yep.
and I think you kind of settle into a routine after a little bit. What were some of the challenges you experienced with, we can break this down a couple ways. Getting used to 375 grams of protein is a lot of protein. That is so
Yes,
much. I mean, that's way more than I've ever programmed for myself or anybody.
and that's
So
daily.
how, yeah, right. Um, so what was the adjustment like getting used to it? And then also maybe let's dive into how it affected your training. We let's just talk about kind of the in and out as you were going through these
Yeah.
changes.
Well, I'll say the biggest adjustment right off the jump was saying goodbye to a lot of foods. So, I mean, you said it right there, 375 grams of protein is a lot, and 100 grams of fat is not a lot. So, right off the jump, I went half a year pretty much. I think I lost all that weight within a 6 month period. if I remember correctly. So for half a year, I did not eat red meat at all. Um, Eggs were like the barest minimum. A lot of my food was coming from very, very lean meats. So the first challenge there was just trying to figure out what is that. So for that whole time, I was living off of chicken breast, I think it's like 99 or something, like percent lean ground turkey and tuna with rice and everything like that, rice, potatoes, a little bit of like wheat bread and stuff as like things I would eat before I could work out, kind of give myself some energy. I think the biggest challenge was finding out what to eat, and then the next one was okay, how am I going to stick on this because there's not a lot of flavor in that. I was it was very interesting. I felt like I was like a strong man dieting like a bodybuilder, pretty much. So like I was I would say, yeah, that was just kind of the biggest battle was trying to eat that turkey every day, and you realize it sucks. And the first like month or two, you're so worried about making sure you hit everything. You don't want any extra stuff that you keep everything very basic and simple. And so like I was cooking the turkey and then that was it. And then it would go on the rice. And then you're like, this is the driest, the driest meal I've ever eaten in my entire life. And there's no flavor. And something else that, I feel like is a big fear for a lot of people is mine too, is that it when you never diet like how I was doing and then you go into it, it's a lot of like headache. It's a lot of like I have to actually think about what goes in my mouth. I mean, the rule of thumb for us was if it was more than a bite, I was tracking it. I was tracking everything through like my fitness pal to figure out what the macros were. I was having meals saved in there. Like you do as much as you can, and it's not until you figure it out a little bit that you lean up. And go into that a little bit later. How it affected the training to answer the second part of that question of yours was it surprisingly it didn't affect me as much as I thought. It actually didn't affect me towards the very tail end. Surprisingly enough, the only thing strength wise that got affected was my deadlift max went down by 50 pounds. And like my overhead press kind of like maintained. I would say it didn't really go up. It maybe went down like 10 pounds. So surprisingly enough, I was able to maintain my strength very well with it. So training wise, if anything, it got better because all of a sudden I was dropping pounds like no one's business. Um, and I was able to start to move. I was moving before, not like I was like a stiff lug just rolling around the gym, big roly
Right.
poly. But it was my body, I was moving differently, and my body got affected a lot. Like I would say one of the biggest changes with the training was actually having to adjust all of my positioning and all my stance and all my technique. Um, when you lose a lot of weight, all of a sudden you don't need to be as wide on like your foot stance as you think you need it to be, and you actually find that you have more power adjusting things. And so I was like probably every 2 to 3 weeks I was having to like readjust. I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm standing right. I feel weird. After 2 3 weeks I'd be down like 7-ish pounds or something, and then I'd be like, huh, my deadlift feels weird, and then I'd bring my feet a half a step in, and all of a sudden I felt normal again, and then my squat was the same deal, and so that was definitely the biggest weirdest thing with the training.
So that actually highlights something that I'd love to get more of just a psychological perspective on is I myself, when I've gone through weight loss of, 50 pounds plus and clients that I've worked with, I always try to tell people like there's going to be things that you just don't see coming that will be an issue.
Yeah.
And so, in your perspective, in your experience, how did you handle all of these things that you maybe didn't see being an issue when you first started? How were you able to overcome? They always say like the punch you don't see is the one that hurts the most.
Yeah,
So what did you do to kind of roll with the punches when all these things started happening that you just didn't expect?
it's kind of hard because I feel like this is something that no one has until they find something that drives them hard. For me, it wasn't challenging at all. And even though I wasn't seeing a lot of stuff coming, my goals and aspirations for myself and just everything I'm pushing for was enough to just stay on the path. Like when things would come, like I said, like, oh, this week my position doesn't feel right. I'll adjust it a little bit. I'll go from there. Like I knew that what I was doing was the right thing for me. I knew that the only way I was going to be able to still have a positive coming out of this because the only thing I really knew going into it was that there was a very strong chance a lot of my strength was going to go away. So to be honest, it was just my goal was just to make that not be the case. My goal was I'm going to do anything and everything to push hard, and the only way to do that is to keep training hard. So you could go in and oh, it doesn't feel right today. I'll try it again next week or something. Or you can go into that workout right there and be like, no, I'm making the adjustment right here. And so it really was just my thought process and just the kind of the drive that you get when there's something you're very passionate about. So
And then
I
just
wish I could
solving it
have
the second the problem was there. Like not,
exactly.
that's actually a really wise thing. 'Cause I think the longer you hold on to something, the more power a lot of times it has over you.
Yep.
So if every time something new came up, if it was like, okay, let's just drop everything, let's get right after this, make sure we solve this problem, move forward, take it day by day. I'm sure that helped immensely in the long run.
And I also had a great training partner and coach too. There's no way I could take credit for my whole like experience and journey and transformation with it all. I mean, that's another thing too, is you got to have people that are in your corner. And I was lucky at the point where actually my training partner and my coach and a few other guys in the group we all decided to go on a cut. So we're kind of doing it all together and training together at the same time. So we also had other people dealing with it, so that was something else too. Like there was a lot of like, okay, I need to be on top of it because the only one to keep you accountable is going to be you. But it did help having other people involved as well to help me with staying on goal and on track. So
Yeah. Having a community always makes consistency better. I think if you can find like-minded people, if you can get a coach or a trainer, whatever that may be that you need for the support when you're going through that. So something I noticed when you were explaining this process is this was a pretty extreme diet, which I fully
yeah,
understand when you're competing in a sport, you understand sometimes you have to do something that's a little crazy for a little bit to quickly get where you need to be.
yeah,
Um, from my perspective, where I'm a lot of times working with, more day-to-day people, maybe not, hopefully professional strongmen, a lot of things I look for is more like long-term sustainability. So I'd love to hear, because you've lost this weight a decent amount of time ago. How long have you been able to maintain?
oh, I've maintained around 400 for about a year now.
Sweet. So a year is long time. Most of the time when people lose weight, you're going to get a rebound within a year. Usually, if they can make it to 5 years, it's pretty set by then. But it sounds like you're doing really well. For you, what was the key to getting going out of that real crazy aggressive and then into a maintenance phase?
Uh, well, when I went into my maintenance, it was like a godsend. It was, it was because I added like another like 200, 300 calories, and then all of a sudden the world is wide open. You're like, look at all this stuff I could get. I wasn't able to do it all the time, but all of a sudden beef was back in the diet. It turned into like a once or twice a week thing. It's kind of like a treat. Um, all of a sudden sandwiches are back in action, baby. You're able to actually do two pieces of bread on a sandwich instead of just one, fold it in half, and you're like, let's go.
Well,
So
you definitely don't lack in discipline and fortitude because that sounds pretty rough.
and you know what? That was also what kind of got me through that first little phase of the maintenance. Was just being so disciplined with the cut going into it, I was like, well, I for sure don't want to have to do that for as long as I did that again. So we're gonna make sure we stick to this weight, so I don't have to go back into my cut right away to try to get back down to that weight. So the maintenance was pretty graceful and easy and everything. I will say this: no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I would say about halfway through the year into my maintenance, I did run into a little bit of diet fatigue. So to handle that, I didn't track, but I ate reasonably, kind of maintained. So sometimes I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it a lot, but sometimes you just need to give yourself a break too. So that was something I had to do as well to kind of just stay on the path of maintaining and just kind of eating good. Is I had to give myself a break. I had to be able to go and eat two baconators and be okay with it, and to not have it sit on my head and stuff, and kind of have to give yourself a better understanding and appreciation for food, and that kind of makes sense.
Oh yeah, because
um
sometimes that
so
pendulum just swings too far, and you trade one vice for another, where you go
exactly.
from never thinking about food to always thinking about food, and you're weighing every lentil, and you get just a different version of disordered eating. So,
Yeah, it definitely, and exactly how you explained it, mine was so extreme going the one way that I think I knew kind of subconsciously that the chances for a fallback were really big. So I needed to find a way to make it not go back as far. And my best course of action was to take a break for a little bit of just tracking hard, but I didn't go right back to eating like a slob. And I would still try to get my protein as high as possible and stay to good carbs and keep them low. But like when the weekend would come and I wanted to eat a pizza, I'd eat a whole pizza. I knew I wasn't going to eat a whole pizza every single day. I knew I wasn't going to eat a hamburger every single day, and it definitely made it better. And I'm actually going into a bulk right now, going to the off season, try to put on a little bit more muscle mass. So I'm actually back into the counting, the macros, and everything. And I ought to say, it is 10 times easier was the first time, and I have a new kind of like little new wind in my sail going into this one because I did give myself a little bit of time off to go into it. So it definitely was good for me. That was probably the best way I was able to maintain and stay on the straight and narrow.
another question for you that I think is always good to take into consideration when I'm talking to someone who has gone through something as great as you did, right? 60 pounds is a ton. Is if you were going to go back through it, what do you think was like your biggest mistakes that you could definitely like, man, I'm going to avoid that this time?
I think the biggest mistake I made during that cut was how to word this was developing a bad habit or bad way that I was looking at food, certain foods. I think a lot of times people go and they work on a cut or they work on a diet, and you don't look at all of the good things that you can still eat, you can still have, that you can make. You look at all the things you can't. And so it kind of gives you like this. I kind of had this weird, like, bitter thing with a lot of foods that I couldn't have anymore. And so it kind of made, there was a little period there kind of towards the, not the exact beginning, but close to the beginning, that like, oh, this ain't, I miss all of this, and all this food I'm eating sucks because it's not what you're used to. I mean, the one food I'll never give up, like ever, my entire life, is a good old hamburger. That is my safety net. That is my happy place. You cannot mess one up. You can add anything to it. It's delicious. And you just can't, you cannot get that that extra lean ground turkey to taste like a hamburger, no matter how hard you try. And so
Right.
I think you just have to. I think you need to take a step back because it wasn't until about halfway through that I was like, I think I need to look at this different. I need to find better ways to make this food taste better. I need to find more foods I can eat. Because I started off, it was very simple. It's pretty much those five things I listed off earlier, five or six. I can't remember how many I did, but and it wasn't until halfway through that I found other foods that also worked, made things better. Because I was so busy focusing on all the negatives of what I couldn't have to not look at the positives. So I would say that was probably my biggest mistake. And if I go back now, obviously I know more now, but if I didn't know everything I knew, but I knew it's this one key is just don't focus on the negatives with it. You need to have a good, healthy relationship with food. And that means if there's things you can't have, you need to find more things that you can have.
It's easy to spiral when all you're focusing on is, maybe the things you're sacrificing and you don't look at the opportunities you have to grow or, you know, just the benefits that you get to learn all these new things. So that
Yeah.
really is a great point. One other thing, a question I always kind of like to end on when I'm wrapping up is just you have a good amount of knowledge. You've lost, 60, 70 pounds. You're an athlete. If you were going to give someone just like a little chunk of wisdom, if they're on the beginning of their health journey,
Nothing in life's easy. Nothing in life worth getting is easy, especially. Don't let the you now rob the you of the future. Yes, it's not fun. Do I Would it be nice to be able to be skinny and also eat 8,000 calories of junk food? Yes. Does that candy bar right now sound delicious? Yes. Does you know what? It's too hard to hit these macro goals right now. I'm just gonna not do it. 100%. I mean, all those things are so hard, especially in the moment. But at the end of the day, at the end of your goal, at the end of your journey, you're going to look back and you're going to thank past you so much for not giving up on yourself. I mean, I'll give you a little sneak peek right now. I lost all that weight instantly. I mean, I used to have like foot pain that was hurting all the time. Every step was painful. Foot pain gone. Knee pain from football gone. Back's never been healthier. My heart feels healthy. I'm not sweating sitting in a room. I'm able to get sleep again. I'm able to do so many more things now that make me a better athlete. That one part of it, just losing weight, eating healthy. I didn't realize all the things that were going to come from it, and my strength game has come back tenfold. I am almost exactly to all the maxes I was at when I was at 450, at 400, 410. I'm working on getting my deadlift back up to 700 again. It's moving all in the right direction. I'm doing it at a lower body fat, a lot of lower body weight, and all of the issues I was having from being so heavy was what were holding me back. And now all those are gone. I don't have any excuses now. There's nothing I can't say I can't do this run right now because my feet feel like there's 1,000 pins and needles in, And I wouldn't know that all those things were gonna happen if I didn't stick to it. So a future you is going to thank you, but stay strong, see this through, see what's going to happen. And I guarantee you, after you hit that first goal, after you lose those first LBs, and you start to realize that maybe my body's not meant to hold an extra 100 plus pounds, I feel a lot healthier right here. I feel a lot better right there. I think that's the most important thing is,
I fully agree with that, that it's so hard sometimes to know how great the other side of that discomfort is. And so just yeah, I usually try to say like wait until things are working to give up,
yes,
instead of and I think that's what you're
that's really
getting
good.
at, that now you would never go back, even though, you had to grow, you had to go through all that pain and suffering. Now that you feel better in every aspect and that you're a better athlete, it'd be a no-brainer. And
Yeah.
if you could have seen this when you started, it would have been easy, but sadly we don't. So we just have to kind of hope and believe. So that's awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your time. I've learned a lot from you, and
of
I wish
course.
you the best in your strongman endeavors. I hope to see you in the pro stage here soon,
Well, thank
hopefully the
you.
next
Thank you.
year or so. But that was pretty much all for today. Like I said, thank you, and I think we got a lot of good information covered, so we'll just end it there.